All right. Kate, we meet again.
We do. We're making a habit of this, Aaron, almost
Yes,
weekly.
exactly. We have to keep it up.
I think we do.
Amazing.
I guess that
Well,
some people might know what we're talking about. For those who don't know what we're talking about, Raleigh and I, with the Cha Cha Club, which I run, have been hosting every week now for the last 2 weeks, previous 2 weeks, an event called Rally Around Research Ops. And it's been amazing, right? Like
it
five,
has been.
6 bite-sized videos per session on the intricacies of research operations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been super fun. It's all about highlighting amazing REOPS leaders and specialists within their company and all the amazing work that they're doing out in the field. So I think the first one was on operationalizing democratized research.
Yeah, I mean, like that's a mouthful.
It is, but I love it because it
Yeah,
hits all the key chords. We had some amazing talks,
we
and the
did.
second one was participant recruitment turbocharged.
That's right.
Yeah, which was
And
full
that
of
was,
action-packed tips.
yeah, so many tips inside that content. I thought, by the end of it, it was like a 101
Hmm.
on how do you even start thinking about delivering zooped up participant recruitment. And someone actually said to me afterwards, they gave me feedback and they said, I think it was a 101. Now I want the 102.
All right. Well, we got to give them what they
We
want.
do. Yeah. And then, of course, next week we have um, now I'm testing myself. Upskilling people to do better research.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll be a fun one too.
it will be. Yeah, lots in there as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We'll give it another minute or so before kicking off. But for those that have not yet attended a Rally AMA, we're honored to have a one-of-a-kind special guest here, Kate Towsey. We'll be here. We'll, of course, give a nice introduction, but we'll be here until the top of the hour together. I'm going to start with a few pre-prepared and pre-submitted questions to talk a little bit more about Kate's life and her new book, which if you haven't yet heard about it, you'll hear all about it. And
Here's the real thing.
there we go. And then depending on how many questions you all have, we'll open the last 15, 20, even 30 minutes or so for your questions. So make sure to submit as we go. No reason to wait until the end. Feel free to submit. You can upvote each other's questions so that the best ones rise to the top, and we'll make sure to answer them all live. Okay, it looks like some people may not be able to see us. Can everyone else, can you post in the chat if you can see us, just to make sure that we are.
The joys of digital.
Yes.
I see we've got someone from Ireland,
Okay.
Louisiana.
Okay, people see us. Great.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
Lovely. Visual
Visual
confirmed.
confirmed.
That's great.
I love it. Okay, well, I think we're good to get started then. And for anyone having technical issues, just pop in the chat and we'll do our best to help. Okay, we're here. And Kate, before we officially kick off and talk more about your new book and everything that has gone into that, would love to start learning a little bit more about yourself and hearing more about your journey, how you ended up not only in, but essentially creating the magical world of research ops that we all now find ourselves in. We'd love to hear. And I know you can chat about this for forever. So up to you how much you want to share. And we're all just excited to learn more.
Amazing. Well, I'll keep it short. I've actually done operations for years. I think many people can say that. I started off in e-commerce, And I was actually asked by a friend of mine in 2024 to work on his e-commerce site called Vedic Books, which I think is still on the internet. And it was running on OS Commerce. And he had just come back from India for like 9 months. So I'd been hanging out with yogis and doing that sort of thing. And he came back and he said, there's this thing called the internet. And of course, I mean, 2004, this is quite a long time ago. And actually, was it even earlier than that? Trying to think back. It was 2004. So Amazon, I think, had only just started. It really felt like the dawn of the internet. For me, at least. I was in South Africa and we were a little bit behind on things. And so I remember very clearly him saying, well, would you run the back end system, just the customer services for my book business? And he was doing this amazing thing, which at the time was pretty cool, selling books online and shipping them all over the world. And I remember him sitting down with me and showing me, this is what a CMS looks like. This is how, or at least it was the e-commerce system called OS Commerce, open source commerce. And he showed me through the whole thing and he said, you take over the customer services side of things. How this hooks back into operations is I remember looking at these systems and going, you know, customers keep emailing me and asking me, where is my book? Like 4 days after they've ordered it. What if we were to develop a automatic message that goes out to them and just says, your book is being processed? And Martin was incredibly, really ahead of his time. And he said to me in sort of the spirit of, what's his name? Tim Ferriss. You know what, if it's under, I'm going to go with $50 spend with my developers, you just do it. And so I knew I had whatever the money was at the time, 250, I forget now. I knew I had some budget to keep working on the system. And long story short, I operationalized myself out of a job because just this one message sent to customers to say, we've got your order and it's being packed. Not even a date of when it was going to leave was enough for the emails requesting, when is my book coming, to stop. And slowly over time, I developed the system over a couple of years. After that, I found myself working actually in a vegan, I was vegan at the time, a vegan e-commerce company doing the same thing, and then in a yoga company working on their e-learning systems. And I completely redesigned the back office systems and then rebuilt the full e-learning system for them. And so went through a journey through content strategy, which is kind of an operation in itself, in a sense, very systems orientated, not just working on tone of voice and communication style, but how does the entire CMS work? And through that, then found my way into the government digital service. I told you this can become a long, circuitous story.
We're here for it.
Yeah, and Lisa Rakelt, another forward-thinking human being, asked me to come and work with the 40 researchers that were working at the GDS at that point, using my content strategy skills to sort out this long problem that everybody will probably have who's listening now, of amazing research just getting lost in the ether once it's been used. And I remember looking at this and thinking, I don't know if I'm the right person for this job. This feels like just a stretch of my content strategy skills. And I was right. I went in, had a look at this and thought, wow, I have no idea what I'm doing here. And in the meantime, contractor, as a consultant, you want to make yourself useful. And so we started the GDS user research blog, which was very successful. I built the GDS user research lab, which ended up becoming a project for me. I built several labs in the end around the UK. I absolutely love doing that. I come from an audio musical background, so that was a natural space for me to be. And then I built a panel, but long before we had the likes of Rally, before you could buy a research specific tool. And so I, within the ethos of GDS, which was very much open source, I procured Sugar CRM and worked with an amazing company to kind of tune it to what GDS needed. But it took tons of money and work to get it to what Rally would do out the box. So that was really then the start of when I started to look at all the systems oriented work that I'd done over the years as operations, and many people reaching out to me from around the world and asking me more about the work that I was doing, which then inspired me to start the Research Operations community, and really kind of get a movement going around it to try and understand, what is this thing that we're doing? Like, what am I doing? What are all these people doing? and how do we really shape it up, because it's so obviously needed by the research profession.
Wow. Wow. I always love hearing how these early career experiences come full circle in these very surprising ways. Even, the fact that your first job that you described was for a bookseller, and now
Yeah. Yeah,
these years later.
it's I should be getting in touch with Martin and saying, "Hey, do you want to branch out to research operations books?" Well, I've got Rosenfeld, and they're incredible.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's amazing. And I'd love to hear a little bit about those early days of the research ops community.
Mm.
Who was involved? What were the types of conversations happening? Was this the first of its kind? What was, if you can transport us
Yeah.
back there?
Yeah, and I want to sort of preface that with just a note that I don't run the research ops community anymore. That's a big confusion for many people. I actually stepped away from the research ops community in 2019, and it's been run by really fantastic people since then. So all the work you see over the last 4 years is not mine. Um, but in the early days, I began the ops community thinking, well, the 20 odd people who had been chatting with me over a few years, they would come and join me in my Slack, my little Slack that I'd started. And very quickly, I realized that was not going to be the truth. The truth was really going to be hundreds of people were interested in this topic and were going to join. Um, I'm I love to get things done. I'm a very like productive person. I want to turn when there's energy around something, I want to turn it into like a tangible asset of some kind. And so when I saw that there were 400 people really interested in this topic and chatting, I thought, here's like an energy that we can use, a power that we can use to really direct what it is we're doing, to really try and understand what it is we're doing. And within that group of 400, there were a number of people who are popping up as really proactive and really interested above everybody else. And that was people like Bridget Metzler, Emma Bolton, um, Nishita Gill in India, well, she's actually now in London. And the list goes on. There was kind of a good crew. Andrew Meyer was another person at the time. Um, and um, and so I said, hey, why don't we gather together? And in fact, Andrew Meyer came up with the idea of calling it the cheese board. Um, which because we were like the big cheeses of the research ops community, and so we just became known as the cheese board, which it stands to this day. And this is when we started to have conversations. I said, like, can we not do something to really frame up what are researchers at that point, really just thinking about researchers. Democratization was kind of on the horizon, but not quite there yet. It's amazing. This sounds like ancient folklore, but it's only like, what, 6 years ago? And so, like, what can we do to shape this up? And we came up with the idea of doing these workshops around the world. And for me, I've lived in Africa. I grew up in Africa. I've lived in India, now in Australia. I'm of UK descent. I've lived in England as well. And I've spent a lot of time in America too. And so for me, it was really, really important that what we did represented not just the Euro US centric view of the world, but involved everybody from around the world. And so that's what we did. I've had millions of phone calls with people in South Africa, in India, in South America, just to really make it a truly global movement. And out of that resolved became the What is Research Ops movement. Then I think it was 32 workshops run around the world by people who'd sort of volunteered their time. I forget now the number of people who took part, but hundreds of people came together to say, what do we need from research operations? What is it to us? And the result of that was the research operations framework. And that's really kind of what I guess it sums it up.
Yeah, amazing. Well, selfishly, I can keep asking questions about this topic and these early days because I'm so curious. 'Cause now it's such a movement that has been created, and
Mm,
research ops is in so many corners of the world and so many different types of companies, and uh, people are at different stages of just waking up to the importance. Others have been working on it for close to a decade plus now and are really pushing the envelope there. So excited to chat more,
yeah.
but
Can I
uh,
add one thing in there, and then I will
yeah,
let us move
please.
on? A couple of things is people often think that I invented research operations. It would be lovely if it was true. Research ops was, in fact, in some of the big behemoth companies of our time. Facebook had a research ops team long ago. Airbnb for since 12, 13 years or something, possibly even longer. Salesforce, again, very, very long time. Um, Microsoft, 20 years or something like that. So there were these very big companies who had gone, hey, we've got dev operations, we've got just general operations that came out of the manufacturing world, and we should apply this to our larger research teams. And then the second thing is, before we move on, what's something that's really surprised me recently in conversations I have with folks in research ops is that research ops is definitely not just behind research anymore, or just for research anymore. There are many research operations teams, often teams of one, but they're working directly under design operations or with even something called creative operations or directly with product. So it's really like anyone who wants to learn and learn how to capture knowledge really efficiently and effectively, they're interested in research operations, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's pretty incredible. And I love the connection of research ops to learning, because that's what research is all about at the
It's
end
all
of the
about,
day.
yeah.
Amazing. Well, we're already getting some amazing questions submitted, and I'm excited to hop into that. But why don't we start a little bit about your book? And if you can share us what inspired you to write it, and give us maybe a glimpse into some of the key topics that you explore.
If you see me looking down, it's because I've actually got it in my hand, which is pretty cool. I have been a writer most of my life. My jobs, aside from operations, have usually involved content strategy, involves how you communicate. One of my first jobs was I was a radio producer and a radio scriptwriter. So I've always really enjoyed communication and sharing. And then underneath that, people often say that I've got like multiple chapters to my life. Underneath that, I studied teaching. I did a degree in fine art, and part of that was teaching. How do you teach? And so I'm very interested in how we learn, which is also why I'm interested in research and how we break research down and how we teach each other things, whether it's a participant teaching a researcher or research teaching someone else what they've learned through word of spoken or written or however. So when it comes to writing a book, I was actually also like, aside from writing down what I know about research operations, it's a big book. It's probably one of the thickest books that Rosenfeld has ever published. And so I really went for it. And I've written down a lot of what I know. And I'm really curious to see how other people build up on it over time. But there was also for me the inspiration of, how do you write a book? Like, that's something I've been wanting to do since I can remember, is to write a book and really learn how to write a good book. And so I've really enjoyed and spent a long time really with my editor, Marta, at Rosenfeld Media, learning about structuring and how you put together something that really reads well. And so far, the signs are that I've managed to achieve that. I was very, very chuffed. About 2 weeks ago, there's a company called Kirkus Reviews in the States. They're like a big book reviewing company. And they sent a note to say they wrote a really beautiful review of my book, which was great, and they review nonfiction, fiction, everything. But then they sent a note to say that their indie department had selected my book to go into their October magazine, and only 25% of all submitted books go into this magazine. And only
Wow.
one other Rosenfeld book has ever made it in. And I was just like, game over. because these are righty people. They're not research operations technical people. They're not business
Yeah.
people. And so that was really some of the inspiration was also, how do you just write a really good book? I hope everybody will agree once they've read it that I've managed to do that.
Yeah. No, I have a feeling that's going to be the first of many exciting moments that come from having brought this to the world. And I love how you explained, of course, your passion for learning. What's the flip side of that is teaching. And what better way to teach than to write and to, figure out how to clarify all your thoughts in a way that's engaging and exciting, and that stimulates learning in the end of the day. So it's
Yeah. And you've made me realize also, even with content strategy is all about breaking content up into chunks of information so they're more easily digestible. what is research operations if not you are looking at the operations of recruitment and ethics and privacy and how we get money into the organization to do more research and do different better things, but you're also very much in the knowledge management space looking at how do we communicate content in a way that it is really digestible by our audience, right from CEO, C-suite, all the way down to your immediate stakeholders. So I had not thought of that connection before.
Yeah, amazing. Well, all super, super fascinating. Okay, so the title of the book, research that scales. So tell us a little bit about what does it mean to scale research effectively?
Yeah. So I first finished the first draft of this book. I thought it was going to be the final draft about a year and a half ago. And I submitted it to my reviewers and to Rosenfeld and got some really great feedback on it. And then realized when it came back and some feedback was all very kind, but also a couple of them said, it's good, but it's not great. And I was like, no, I need to do my very best with this. And so I had also had time to step back and really think about what I was writing about. And when I first started writing this book, and this is where we hook into your question about scaling, it was in 2020. We were all flying around, premium economy, if not business for some people, snacks galore, amazing
Mhm,
offices, lots of money, people being hired left, right, and center, research scaling like no one's business. And I was writing this book out of this incredibly optimistic view of this is going to continue.
mhm,
And of course, February came. I started writing the book in February 2020. February 2020 came, and the world, as we know, shifted for a lot of us. And within that started the tech layoffs. So when I got to 2023, last year, 2022, the landscape of research was completely different. And I'd
mm,
written a book that I realized really leaned into this like, oh, research is just scaling endlessly and we're doing so great. But what an amazing time also to really interrogate what does scaling research mean? Because we're descaling at a rapid rate here. And we need to figure out and like really look in the mirror and understand what do we do different next time so that when another economic shift hits, because it will, because they always do, every 7 years or so, the pundits say, how do we become more resilient the next time round? And so I rewrote half of the book, and part of that
I think we lost Kate. See if her Wi-Fi picks back up at the best part of the story. Just the good part. Please hold tight. It is like a movie. I know, a very dramatic pause. In the meantime, I think there's a poll going on as well. So if you haven't, oh, Kate is back.
I am back. I have
Amazing.
no idea. Just disappeared offline.
Oof,
Oof, gone, but
all
I'm
right,
back.
we're back.
Um, I think I
Good.
can pick up where I was.
Please.
Maybe I can't. What were my last
So,
words?
so you were talking about, every 7 years, a pendulum shifts. So
Yeah,
what an amazing
great.
opportunity to be rewriting
Exactly.
this book.
Great.
Hmm.
Thank you for that. So, yes, so I rewrote half of the book and really, instead of just delivering here's the ABCs of research operations and how you deliver excellent tooling and etc. Um, I stepped back and really, there's a chapter called research. Actually, the first chapter is called very cheekily. Um, research does not scale, systems do. Because I had to really step back and question what do we actually mean by scaling research? It's a word that's become so cliched. We talk about scaling up, scaling down, scaled up. What do we really mean by this? And so I say that it's cheeky, and I didn't actually think I would get away with that chapter one title because the book is called Research That Scales, and yet the first chapter is called Research Does Not Scale. Systems do. And what I mean by that is that when things are scalable in the world, it's because they're repeatable. And so you can create more and more of them more and more efficiently, and they're proportional. But proportional means repeatable. And so when it comes to, like a motor car or a chocolate bar is my favorite example, or a cookie, or, pick your mass manufactured thing, you can scale those up and you can figure out what are the proportions of this thing. It's going to cost me so much to create this cookie, and I need so many chocolate chips and so much this and so much that. And so now how do I make them even more quickly, even more high quality, and even more cheaply so I can get even more value out of it? But that doesn't work as easily when you're scaling research, because the asset of research, or the actual, there's no like actual product in research that's tangible. You're selling knowledge, and the knowledge is only valuable when it's in someone's head and in their belief system. And therefore, because they believe it, they're going to do something about it. They will shift their focus, they'll adjust that feature, they will take a completely different strategy. And so that makes that's a really interesting question about, okay, so if we don't have a actual, the tangible product is not there and it's not repeatable in the same way, what do we scale? There is a fantastic quote in the book. I actually forget for the moment who it's by. You'll find if you ever write a book, you'll forget half of your quotes. But he says something that I think is really interesting, which is, if you look at a house, for instance, it's made out of lots of repeatable things. Bricks are all the same wiring, same light fittings, and even those things will have slightly different aspects to them. Like you get slightly different size bricks and things. But architects or building designers can take these things and create completely unique environments using these same structured things. To reverse one little bit on that, when you're looking at something like recruitment, let's talk in the Rally wheelhouse, there's very little that's actually repeatable there as well, because any researchers on the call now will probably be nodding wildly when I say no research study is the same. Even if you're studying the same feature week on week on week, you're more than likely going to be shifting slightly your focus on the types of participants you're recruiting. Maybe one week you want to speak to people who are living with disabilities, and your recruitment process will be completely different to the next week when you want to speak to fully able people, or VIPs. A completely different recruitment strategy. And so there again is, you've got a huge variety and uniqueness in a world that we're trying to scale, and yet the job of operations is to step back and find out what are the bricks, the wires, the light bulbs that I can put in place to help build this unique house that's going to particularly suit the population, or this unique city even. I think operations is a lot like civic design, research operations especially. How can I use these same elements to continually rebuild these unique spaces quickly, so that people can have these unique experiences of research all the time? So it takes a philosophical shift to try and understand how you scale something that is etheric. And that's what I really go through in that first chapter. Like, what does that practically look like? And a lot of it can be taking inspiration from the world around us, from any industry that creates something unique as a result of common ingredients, including go and sit at the bar at a restaurant, like when you get those great, I love bar tables at restaurants, where you can see into the kitchen. And they'll make smart kitchen will make lots of different dishes out of very similar ingredients, so they can keep their operations simple. And it's these kinds of places you can get inspiration for how do you scale something that is unique, and yet you try and find those repeated pieces in it.
Hmm. I love that. Love that analogy. So many great takeaways there. And it's funny, we haven't ever spoken about this, but whenever I demo Rally to a new prospect or new customer, I always use the analogy that it's a house, and each room in the house, is made up of its own components, but there's certain things that exist in every room of the house, but they're used for different reasons, whether you're
Yeah.
in the pantry or in the bedroom or in the bathroom, and each room has its own nooks and and corners, and yeah, I just love that. Love that analogy.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, even transport systems are one of my favorite. because when someone gets up in the morning and say, you're commuting to work or wherever you're going, everybody's taking a completely unique journey to get to where they're going. And you might even change your journey halfway. Suddenly decide, oh, I must go and pick up some lunch or something or whatever, or pick up a breakfast or a coffee. And so you'll change your journey. And yet the way transport systems are set up are that millions of people can take these unique journeys along the same lines.
Mhm.
And if we can take that approach to recruitment, especially, how do you enable hundreds of people in your organization, if that's the sort of scale you're working at, to take completely unique journeys along very similar commuter lines to get to their destination, to get to the population of people that they are interested in? And one last analogy around that, because there's just so much in here and I'm so passionate, I could just get stuck into it,
Yeah.
is that what I absolutely love is like, if we can just shift our mental state about what we're actually doing with recruiting, is we're trying to connect someone with a population of people, a demographic. And if you look at the example I give is San Francisco, but you can apply it to your local town. Typically, there'll be Chinatown. And if I say Chinatown, you're probably already thinking you're going to get really good quality Chinese food there. You can get a sense in your head of what you might find there. Same Japantown or the Garment District in New York, you get a sense of what you might find there. Um, and so I don't have to give you much information, but if I just say Chinatown and there it is, and you want to eat Chinese food, without me giving any more information, you're probably going to be pretty successful if you go in that direction. And I
Mhm.
think if we can take that approach to recruiting as well, that sort of civic journey, and that
Mhm.
journey of cultures, I think it becomes a lot more human as well.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, can get stuck in this for sure. Can nerd out a
Yeah.
while, and I love the transport analogy too. You're creating this environment to bring people to a destination that's also comfortable, that's safe, that has
Mm,
guardrails around it. That they, even if they mess up, there's still ways
yeah.
to go back and get back
Yeah.
on the right track. And uh, yeah, super fun.
Yeah, and that they understand the etiquette of the culture. They're going,
Hmm.
like you don't go into a really smart restaurant dressed in like your like beach clothes because
Hmm.
that's just not the etiquette. And so, if you can try and build in these natural ideas around what is the etiquette of engaging with this particular population.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's go back. Well, this is all part of the book, but
Yeah.
curious to hear for a newer person in the research ops field, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that are trying to break in. And what is one thing that you hope they take away from reading your book?
Mm. One of the big things is really how to step back and think about how all the pieces fit together before just diving into, someone says fixed participant recruitment, which the only reason I mention that is because that is one of the most common ones. The next one to that, which might even be overtaking, is build us a library. And so there can be what I call knee-jerk operations, where it's just like, well, like I've been asked to do this thing, so I must rush out and go and procure a tool, um, without really truly thinking through the whole picture of what needs to happen. And so what the book gives you is a series of frameworks. You should only need to read this book once, by the way, because what I'm aiming to do through the book is retrain your mental thinking, like retrain your brain to think operationally as you read through, so that it actually sits in your mind and you can just respond from there on. And so you should step back, have a look at what's in the entire picture that's involved in doing this thing, why you would do it, what you are specifically going to achieve, which really kind of brings, I think chapter 2 is lost in one on strategy. Really thinking about what is the research strategy? What is the strategy for our operations? What do we want to achieve with the library? Don't just build a library. Understand, do you want this library to speak to the C-suite? Do you want it to speak to this particular segment? What is there a particular type of research you want to really push? What are your goals with it? So that's really big. Um, and then once you've decided why and therefore what you're going to do, because now you've got specificity, which is the definition of a good system,
Hmm.
is that you can really plan well. Because what tends to happen is it's like, okay, we need to deliver a library, go and procure a tool. But then there's not a lot of realization upfront of how much work goes into all the various elements of research operations. And I'll actually share a picture in a moment I've uploaded into the slides to show you what I mean. Um, and so you suddenly end up with just this overwhelming amount of work. And many research operations folks experience this, where it's like, wow, I've just procured this one tool, but now I've suddenly realized that I've got to deal with privacy and ethics, because what are we storing for how long in the library? I've got to deal with archiving and information management, the sort of knowledge management side of it. I need to do training to train people how to access this tool and do and this is like all this work going on that hasn't been planned for upfront. So what I'll share is this is page 75 of the book, and I call this the Venn diagram of research operations. And in here, you've got the 8 elements of research ops, which are participant recruitment, knowledge management, onboarding and support, tools and vendors, ethics and privacy, money and metrics, so important, often forgotten, program management, and people and skills. And the reason it's a Venn diagram, and sorry, around this is culture and practice, because that's really what you're wanting to develop, is what is the culture of learning in the organization and what is the practice of learning. Very often you will pick up participant recruitment or knowledge management or one of the other tools, or you'll get a tool and vendor, you procure them. But what's not realized is that every time you touch one element, every single other element is involved. And so within the book, and I don't actually have the screenshot up, is the Research Ops Planning Matrix, which is pretty simple, but it asks you when you're planning a project out to look across all of the 8 elements, because every single one of them will to some degree get involved, and then to plan across, what is existing already, what needs to be, what can we pick up and reuse, what could we automate so we don't have to continue to do it over and over again, and in the future, what is the keep the lights on tasks, what am I going to always have to do? Because what happens is the KTLOs, the keep the lights on tasks, tend to pile up over time, and suddenly you find that you're running around like a crazy person with all these various systems you've built, and now you've got to maintain them all. So that's really, I would love everybody, once they've read the book, to be able to step back and go, I've got these frameworks that are going to help me plan realistically, question what I'm doing and why, and therefore deliver really sustainable, which is critical to being scalable. You cannot scale something that is unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
A sustainable and therefore scalable system that is going to support research in the long run.
Amazing. And I'm already thinking of so many specific examples I've seen out in the wild where, yeah, you just assume, okay, we buy this tool or, start doing this and it's all going to be figured out. And then all the we call them nested problems, start to appear of
Yeah.
what did we not expect was going to be so critical to figure out. And now we've kind of dug ourselves into a bit of a hole. And so, yeah, that's a gift to be able to give someone that way of thinking and help them circumnavigate some of those problems in the future.
Yeah. And problems always pop up, but I always kind of feel if you've gotten rid of some of the what are they, known unknowns or unknown knowns?
The unknown unknowns. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When the unknown unknowns pop up, then you've got a bit more space. You've got mental clarity to make good decisions around them instead of just you skating on ice all the time.
Totally. I'm curious, do you ever talk about, because when I look at that visual, I think of an organism, like a living, breathing structure that you touch one part of it and there's ripple effects to every other part.
Yes. There, because I'm such a queen of an analogy, there are so many analogies I had to take out of the book, and one of them was like a central nervous system. That really what you're wanting to become as research is the central nervous system of the organization, where you're feeding the brain of the organization all the time. And yeah, there are endless analogies, and it's really great because people often ask me, well, where do you study research operations? Because it's a nascent field and we don't have the Research Ops University yet. We've now got the manual, but there are so many places to study about research operations, endless amounts, but you just got to look creatively, go to sit at the restaurant bar, watch how businesses run. I watch Formula One and I'm always looking at how they how do they run their teams and how do they run it on track and the strategy around it. But also things like endless amounts of books on knowledge management and how do people think and learn, like endless books. Um, Business management, Harvard Business Review is an incredible resource to constantly dig into what is the history of operations, how have people mechanized industry, and sort of all of that. So service design, you cannot do
Hmm.
research operations without a really good service design muscle. And so anyone, listening now, wanting to learn more about research ops, pick up my book. But then also there's a lot of references in here that points to things that are outside of our immediate field of interest, seemingly, and yet so
Hmm.
related.
Totally. Yeah. It's and it makes it less daunting knowing that there's so many other
Mm,
disciplines nearby that we can learn from.
yeah.
Awesome. Uh, so I want to chat a little bit about money and metrics because you brought that
Mm,
up as a, often sidelined potentially part of the thinking. So tell us what you've learned about that topic and how you what you wish to impart upon research ops professionals that are
yeah.
reading your book.
Yeah. So um, money is interesting because there's actually a quote in there from Joe Biden, and I note that I don't often quote politicians because you get in trouble somewhere along the line, but he did have this really brilliant quote, which was, if you want to know where people's priorities are, find out where the money is. And it's similar, we researchers know that saying what you do versus what you actually do are completely different things. And so if you want to find out where to put energy in the organization, where you're going to grow your financial energy within the organization, which means hiring more headcount, getting the amazing tool, being able to do all the incredible research that shows the impact and all that sort of stuff. Typically, it's about really looking at where the money is a lot of the time.
Hmm.
Um, and so this goes back into the need for research strategy, which is a really big area that needs much more development within the research profession to really understand, okay, so you can't do everything. You can't focus on everybody. And so where is the money? Where do we need to put our energy in order to continue to grow? Um, and then you're doing that, you're deciding, well, we're going to focus on that and we're not going to do that. So it's prioritization. Um, so that's the number one thing. It doesn't mean that you always go for the money. Sometimes you'll find some money to fund something that you think that you can build it up into something that's going to be really saleable within the organization. But when you're nascent, particularly if you're a research operations leader, this is very true, and I've used this to great effect in the past. I'll tell you a story about that. Um, Look to where the money is and go there, because then you can draw some headcount, some contracting funds, something towards you that you can make an impact with, which then gets more notoriety, and then that kind of creates more pull as well again. And so you can kind of get like your own flywheel going in terms of your finances. So the example of this is when I was working at Atlassian. Atlassian was focusing on, I'm sure they still are, I haven't been there for a year and a half now, so this is history, on accessibility. Such an incredibly important thing, and that was it was a priority at a founder level. And they hired an amazing head of accessibility, and he was getting a ton of funding. And I thought, well, I think it's really important to work on accessibility also, and there's specific requirements in terms of operations around accessibility. And so, and he's got lots and lots and lots of headcount and everything coming through. That's where the organization's priority is. They've said so, but the money's also there. And so we partnered up, and I managed to get, at the time, I think 3 or 4 headcount to work specifically on accessibility research operations.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, those were then frozen with, cutbacks and things like that. But it's a very good example of looking outside to see where are the priorities, where is the money, and that'll indicate the priorities. And very often that can be having a very good relationship with the finance manager for your department, who is open to telling you where the investments are actually being made. So that's one thing. There's a bunch of other more practical tips in the book, or even more practical tips, which are things like end of year finances. Some people are very good at getting money and very bad at spending it. It takes a lot of
Hmm.
work to spend money on time before the end financial quarter or year, or however your fiscal year works when that ends. And if you are organized and you have an MSA signed with an organization to do a bit of work that you would really love to do. I've done this with mapping out an entire onboarding and support with a service designer and a content strategist. You've got everything set up so that when there's some cash left sitting on the table by department X and you're sitting in department Y, and you speak nicely to the finance person, say, I could help you out with that. I could spend that. No one likes to look like they haven't spent their budget for the year. You can scoop it up and you can deliver something within a short frame of time to get it done. And I've built labs, I've delivered all sorts of things on the fly just because I was organized enough to be able to spend other people's money quickly.
Wow, that is savvy. I love it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I've been asking you a lot of questions and I can keep going forever, but let's open it up to the audience. So Patricia here has asked, if research ops is a new concept at your company, what small steps can be taken by a researcher to get started and gain buy-in from their manager?
One of the big things is really digging into what does the research organization want to achieve? What is I'm assuming taken by a researcher. I'm going to assume that you have a research manager, but that is a massive assumption. You might be a researcher working within a design organization. So let's just say your manager. Go and speak to your manager and find out what is on their top list of things that are niggling them, causing anxiety, or really exciting. One of the things that I really truly believe is that strategy is an emotional thing. It's often thought of as this very cerebral, futurist kind of laboratory style thing. But I believe that strategy should be written down, it should be organized, it should be achievable, practical, smart goals, all that sort of stuff, for sure. But the impetus for something becoming a strategic priority can be an emotional thing. This is annoying. It's annoying me all the time, or this is blocking me and I'm frustrated by it. Is it a priority? Should it be a priority to fix that so that we can actually get past that frustration? Or this is really exciting. Every day I wake up and I'm so excited about this. I just haven't figured out how to do it. Speak to your manager to find out what their priorities are, what their annoyances are, where they're putting their money even. And if you can find one or two things and then use the Venn diagram and the research ops planning matrix in the book to really understand this is the complete picture that we're going to map out. This is the actual thing we want to achieve, and deliver that one thing really well. And buy the time to do it properly as well. Sometimes it will take you 3 to 6 months to deliver something really, really impactful, really well thought out, and really strategically planned. Then you're going to get buy-in because now you can actually show a measurable difference. And when I say measurable, I mean in your strategy, you've got, oftentimes I'll see a strategic priority that says, I'm going to make up a ridiculously stupid one, but it'd be like, help researchers recruit more participants. And it's like, well, which researchers? Because maybe there's lots of different, is it people who are doing research? And even in there, is it designers or product managers? Because product managers recruit completely differently to researchers, can't recruit totally differently to designers. So be really specific about which people, what kind of participants. Are you going for VIPs, people living with disabilities, high spenders, just average Joes and Janes? Because that's going to be completely different. So even within that, and you can break every priority, every idea, break it down to the finest specific detail of what you're going to achieve, because then you've got your measurables. Now you can say, actually, we want to recruit 500 VIPs a year, right? But that's a dismal number for Janes and Joes, but a pretty special number for VIPs. And at the end of when you get to your 6 months down the line or 3 months after you've delivered your solution, you can go back and say, wow, we hit 550. And that's something to boast about with a research manager. And once you've done that and you've got something really tangible, then it's much, much easier to get buy-in for future projects that might be kind of even bigger and better.
Amazing. Super thorough, tangible, well thought out. Beautiful. All right, another question here from Cindy. So I wonder how effective research ops teams are organized. We have a few operations analysts, but really feel the need for someone senior on that team to manage systems at a higher level. And
Yeah.
alongside this, I'm curious to add my own little bit. I would love to hear what you think is the future of research ops teams and functions within organizations.
Yeah, this is a fantastic comment/question. I very often see, and this is part of the fact that we are still, even though there have been teams with research ops in their midst for 20 years, the reality is that we're still such a young, we're an incredibly fast maturing, but still a very young profession. And what has happened in the last while is that research operations, often a team of one, was picked up and really fulfilled the job not of research operations, but of a research assistant. It's a very valid role. There is absolutely nothing with a wrong with the research ops assistant or research assistant role. It's just not research operations. Assistance is about picking up the administrative duties of people doing research so that they don't have to do it. Whereas operations is stepping back and actually doing the systems design so that people can help themselves. Or you might decide within your system that there are high value individuals that need a concierge to do everything for them. Just like you have in our, like the civics society, you have some people who have a chauffeur that comes to pick them up in the morning. Some people just get on their bike. Others have a car in their driveway. Everybody has a different level of engagement in terms of how much personal service they get. That's where research operations sits, is designing those levels and designing the full systems. To get to my point, what has happened is that people have typically hired a lot of administrators. This is not all, but many, I see this quite a lot, hired a lot of administrators, but failed to hire the operations designer, the systems designer. And so you've got a lot of people administrating systems that have never been fully and properly and cohesively designed. What I need to see happen in our space, and what I hope that this book will encourage people to do, is to first, before hiring millions of researchers and before hiring sort of research administrators who are incredibly skilled and highly valuable, but hire the systems designer who's got, hire a service designer even, let them come in and learn all about research and get them in place so that they can design the full system and understand what is the workflow, what are we trying to achieve, put the strategy in place, and then you'll know what you even need to administrate in the most efficient and effective way. Instead of getting people to just basically move the administration from researchers to a new place, basically. So that's what I hope, that's what I hope the next version of research operations is. And these senior people are really working, like when I was at Atlassian, I was in the research leadership team. GDS was kind of a different thing, but I worked very, very closely with Lisa Reichelt on, how do we implement her strategy and what are we doing? And so that's really where I hope we end up, is that more and more teams have that very senior leader who's working side on with the design, research, product leader about understanding what are we going to learn about, how are we going to learn, and how are we going to build all the infrastructure that helps us do that in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I have a feeling that your book is going to enable the creation of those types of leaders. So
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're just about 5 minutes left, so we probably have time for one or two more questions. And I know a lot of you have questions that we haven't been able to get to. So what we also like to do is kind of answer them async as well. And after the fact, maybe Kate can respond to a few of them. We can post them after. But maybe let's move on to a question we have prepared. 1 second. Let's see. There we are. Okay. So Kate has coached so many of us on the benefits of an established reops team. I imagine she's seen it all. What has been your biggest aha to date? What truly amazed, delighted you about the reemergence of reops?
Well, Fatima, if you're the Fatima, I think I know. Hello. For me, the aha moment has been realizing a number of years ago it goes back to that piece around the fact that realizing what do we really mean by the word research. And one of the things of writing a book, and I know that Jake Burkhardt, who's writing Stop Wasting Research, has the same problem, is you can end up going down philosophical rabbit holes and getting stuck down there forever, basically reading Aristotle and Plato and wondering, how did I get here? I started writing a book about research ops, and now I'm reading all about justified true belief and Gettier and all sorts of philosophers and things. But it's because research is, I said earlier, it's all about knowledge. And so for me, the real aha moment was understanding that when you can kind of push away the jargon or the sort of assumed concepts of what we're actually doing, um, and what research actually is, and you can kind of let go of all that and see it with fresh eyes as purely about systems for learning, suddenly your whole world opens up, because now there is so much learning to do from pedagogy, from how newspapers, editorial, how does the world, even politics, how do we get people to believe something? What is propaganda? You can learn from all these things going on around you to inform how you might uniquely do things within the organization to sell ideas, to help people learn, to communicate in ways that are compelling, to gain trust and get people on side, because people will not listen to you and they will not act on your knowledge if they don't trust you. And so that's for me, was the real aha moment of, I'm not just here to help people recruit faster, as valuable as that is, to build a library so that we can feel very nice about life because everything's now tidy and cataloged for a short amount of time until it all falls apart, which doesn't have to be the future of a library. It is for many, many libraries, but it doesn't have to be the future if you know what you're doing. That my job is not just setting up all these systems, like building the city and then waiting. It's about creating the culture. And I love community, like Aaron, I run the Charter Club. I absolutely love creating a culture. And that's exactly what you're doing when you're setting up operations. An example I give in the book is that if I say New York, even if you haven't been there, already in your mind, you can probably see fast-paced city. You're in New York right now, Aaron. So for you, it's even real. Like, it's right where it is. You can see the skyscrapers. You get a vibe. You get a sense of the culture, the nightlife. Whereas if I say the Sahara Desert, it's a completely different vibe. Or if I say Paris, suddenly you're thinking wide boulevards, the Champs-Elysees, like French cafes. Or if I say Italy, now probably maybe you're hearing cars and hooting and like traffic and things going on. And so each place, instantly, just by mentioning the names, got a culture and a vibe. And that's been created through the collection of human beings sharing and communicating. That's what you're doing when you're building research operations. You're not just building streetways. Ideally, you're thinking ahead and you're thinking, what kind of culture do I want to build? Who do I want to empower? How do I want them to feel while I do that? And that's for me like the really big aha moment. And that's really what shifts the game and makes it so much more fun. So much more fun than just like, now I'm just going to administrate, like basically become concierge or administrators for other people. I'm going to actually help build something that's got much more memory and sustenance than that.
I love that. You get to create your own world, and that world has its own transportation systems that you've created. It has its own homes that people live in. It has its own feeling and vibe, and everyone can learn and grow and get better together there.
Exactly. I mean, like you look at a research system, and if you think of your own like area you live in, a library, a town hall, a town square, all these different elements, the roadways, the bank to go and get money. It's all sitting there, and that's exactly what we're doing. It's no different. It's just oftentimes digital, and it's got to be curated towards your very own unique culture that you live in within your company.
Totally. Amazing. Well, we are at just about time, and this has definitely been a highlight hour of not only my day, my week, my life. This is like so fun.
Thanks,
that
Aaron.
we get to do this. And yeah, you've been an inspiration for myself and our whole team here at Rally since the beginning. So thank you for everything you do, Kate. We're super excited to be able to partner with you and know that this is just the beginning.
Thank you, Aaron. I mean, it's been so much fun getting to know you and Rally and Lauren behind the scenes of the last month or so and beyond. But also just thank you for there's Lauren. Hello. she is. But also just, a platform to also share my crazy ideas is really appreciated.
Always. always here. And we'll have to do this again for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, go enjoy your morning, and
I will.
thank
Cup of
you,
coffee is on the
everyone.
way.
Yes.
Thanks,
Thank you,
thanks
everybody who
everybody.
joined.
Thanks both of you as well.